So how can these various insects that you guys cover help in determining something like time of death?
Yeah, so the insects that I work with, so we'll start with the blowflies. So as I mentioned, they have a really strong sense of smell for the odors that are associated with decomposition, whether that's decomposition of an animal carcass or of human remains. And so those flies, because of that sense of smell, the females are looking for a resource to deposit their eggs. So that resource is the decomposing remains. So the female flies are on the lookout for a useful resource for their offspring. So once they smell those odors of decomposition, they arrive relatively quickly, and the females will start to deposit their eggs. And typically, the females go for the natural openings, so especially areas of the face, so the eyes, ears, nose, mouth. Those are some of the primary areas that the female flies will lay their eggs. So those eggs will hatch into our smallest maggot, so a first instar. And maggots, all they're going to do is eat. So they don't need to rest, they don't need to sleep. They're just going to keep feeding. So as they feed and they grow, they mature into the next stage of maggot. So that's the second instar. And then they keep eating and growing, and they become the third instar. That's our largest maggot stage. And then once they finish feeding, they'll move off of the remains or under the remains, or if it's outside, into the soil, if it's dry around the body. And there they're going to form a case. It's almost like a cocoon, and that's called a pupa. And so while they're in that protective case, they'll be transforming into an adult fly, and they'll emerge, and now they can disperse and locate food and continue that life cycle. So we can use this information about these insects. So as a forensic entomologist, I know what all of these different life stages look like. And when I arrive to a scene, I can observe the oldest insects that have been developing on the body. So say we show up and I notice that there's those large third instar maggots. I can collect those maggots. I can determine what type of fly is it. And different species of fly require different amounts of time to develop to their different life stages. And that's dependent on the temperature that they experience. So I can use this information about the temperature that they developed at and the type of fly. And I can work backwards in time to figure out when were those maggots first deposited on the body as eggs. And what that does is that provides a timeline for the minimum amount of time that the insects have been active and the minimum amount of time that someone has been deceased.
So every stage has a set number of days, hours that it's going to be like first, second, or third instar, you called it?
Yeah, so there's some ranges for how long it will take different species to develop all the way through that life cycle. But
Hmm.
insects, they can't generate heat like we can. So they're reliant on the ambient temperature. And so the
Okay.
hotter it is, the faster they develop. And the cooler it is, the slower they develop. And so we have to have information about the weather and about the
Right.
temperatures that they
Okay.
experience to actually do those calculations.
Okay. That makes perfect sense.